So let's have a look. Everybody, you're familiar with the format of the Seder, hopefully, yeah? You know what a Seder, what it looks like. So just towards the beginning of the Seder, we have this rather strange interlude, which we'll talk about in Mitzvah Hashem afterward, what's it doing here. But we've got these 4 sons, which don't really seem to fit into the story of the Exodus per se. So let's have a look and see. It says like this: Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. The Torah speaks to 4 different children. Now the 4 different sons that are here are very, very different. Right?
I have a question about this mishpat. Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. Where did the Torah speak about 4 sons?
No, we're going to see in a minute. Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah doesn't mean that the Torah speaks about 4 sons. It means the Torah speaks to 4 sons. Let's have a look and see. The Brisker Rav says like this, very beautiful idea. Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. You've got 4 different sons. They're all very, very different personality-wise. So you've got a Chacham, a wise guy, right? You've got a Rasha, who's a wicked guy. You've got a Tam, who's a simpleton. And then you've got a She'eni Yodeh Lishol, which is kind of difficult to define in one word. So says the Brisker Rav, the most beautiful idea. Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. The same Torah speaks to every single child. You've got very, very different personalities over here, and yet the Torah is going to speak to every single one. And then he adds a sentence which I think is absolutely fundamental. If you've got a son, if you've got a child who's not hearing what the Torah is saying, it's not a problem with the Torah. More often than not, it's a problem with the way that the information is being passed across. Which the truth is, it's absolutely basic. It really is. Very often we say to ourselves, "Oh, you know, this kid is like a lost cause. He doesn't want to listen. He's not interested." But maybe if we would stop and think just for a minute, right? Maybe the problem. I mean, obviously the kid has his own issues, right? But maybe the problem really rests inside of how we give across information, right? Every single kid is different. Here, you know, right, Michael, you've been involved in teaching. You see perfectly well that you can't, especially when you're tutoring one-on-one, you can't teach each kid the same way. It doesn't work, you know. This kid prefers this kid prefers that, this kid's not interested at all, right?
There is a commonality among all kids, though. If you can make them laugh, you can engage them.
Oh, interesting. Good. Very good, right? But again, once you've got them laughing, though, once they begin to realize that what you've got to teach is interesting, you still have to adapt to each kid's personality.
Of course.
Right? That's the same with parenthood as well. Parenthood's even more acute than that. You know, every single kid is different. Like we have over here, these are 4 sons, and yet they're very, very different. Let's have a look and see what we've got. Chacham, let's start with the Chacham, right? The wise guy. What does he say? So he's a wise. This kid is wise. So we're going to have to try to understand where is the wisdom in his question. Let's have a look and see. What's he asking? He's asking, what is all this stuff, right? What is all this stuff that you're doing? So I'm a little bit stuck over here because why? For 2 reasons. First of all, he's supposed to be a Chacham. Well, where is the Chochmah inside of his question? Where's the wisdom inside of his question?
It's his curiosity, you know?
Curiosity, let's have a look and see. Let's jump to the Rosh and have a look and see, because in a minute we'll see it becomes even more acute, the question, right? Rosha, ma'oimer, what does the Rosha say? The Rosha is a wicked guy, right? Ma avoida azois lachem. What's he asking? Just in different words. He's saying, what's all this stuff that you're doing?
He's excluding himself.
Let me explain.
Oh, good.
Both are excluding themselves a bit.
No.
But the first one, he's not only saying, oh, what's this work? He's wondering what's the reason behind the work. And that's why he's saying, ma edu svachukim. He doesn't say ma avoda. He doesn't look at it as work.
Okay, good.
In Russia, is looking at work. Why the hell are you doing this work? Leave it alone. Leave
Good.
it.
Very good. Okay, so we've got over here two different.
He's not asking why, he's asking how do we fulfill the obligation of keeping Passover.
No, he's asking why.
I don't know, you're being a little bit flexible with the words over here, which is fine, because, okay, the guy's a Chacham, so we're trying to work out where's the Chacham inside of the question. Right? So now I have another question. We haven't answered this one yet, but I have another question, right? What does he ask? What is all this stuff that you're doing, right? He finally breaks it down, and he doesn't call it avodah, which is true, but where's the Chochmah? Listen to the answer. You should say to him, you know that you can't eat after the Afikomen. Is that clear now? I don't know, that's what it says. It sounds like, well, the father's got one answer, and hopefully one of the kids is going to ask the right question at some point, right? So the Chacham says, what is all this stuff you're doing? And the father says, you know, you can't eat after the Afikomen. And then the Chacham's like, oh, okay, that's great. The Sfas Emes, who's a Hasidic Rebbe, the second Rebbe from Gur, has a different approach, and we'll see from the approach of the Sfas Emes, we'll see the Chacham of the question, and we'll see how the answer answers the question. It really does, right? The Sfas Emes puts all of the emphasis of the Chacham's question onto one word, Tziva. Right? Chacham, what does the Chacham say? Ma idut v'chukim v'mishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu etchem. Why does God have to command us to keep the mitzvahs? I love God. I just want to do what God, I want to do what God wants me to do. What's called the Ratzon Hashem, the Ratzon of God. I just want to do it, right? Why do I have to be commanded to do it? Why can't I work this out by myself? Why can't Hashem just suggest that this is what we need to do? It's interesting. Somebody came up with an interesting phrase, in a different place. She said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu never asks. HaKadosh Baruch Hu always commands. Which means that the dynamics of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a dynamic of tzivui. Mitzvot. What are the mitzvot? Commandments, right? So says the Chacham over here is asking a very fundamental question, a very beautiful question. Why do we have to be commanded to keep the mitzvahs? Why can't we just keep them because that's what we want to do? Why can't we keep them because I love Hashem and I've worked out this is what Hashem wants me to do, so I'm going to keep it and I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be thrilled to be able to do it. So now we understand the depth of the question. Let's go back and see what the answer is. What does he answer the father? He says, you know that you can't eat after the Afikomen, you can't eat anything. You know what the father's teaching his son over here? Again, a very beautiful idea.
All the commandments are logical.
Are?
Logical.
No, he's saying like this. Listen to what he's... did you say not all the commandments are logical? Oh, good, very good, right? Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the not. I thought you said that all the commandments are logical, which actually the way that you're laughing right now is probably exactly what you said, and now you're just jumping on to the fact that... No. Okay, whatever. Because
I was thinking all the commandments that we have, and how can you even think that they're all logical?
There's a whole bunch of commandments that are called what? Chukim. Right, what's a chok? Chok is a statute, right? We don't understand, we just do them.
Like paraduma.
Like a paraduma, that's a classic chok, but how about a chok for Pesach? Why do we eat the Afikomen? Nobody wants to eat the Afikomen on Pesach, right? What have we just done? We've eaten 2 kazaisim of matzah at the beginning of the Suda, of the meal, right? We've eaten a kazais of matzah together with a kazais of moror when we ate the korech, when we ate the sandwich. We've eaten a Suda, a meal, and now at the end of all of this, what are we going to do? We're going to eat the Afikomen. What's the Afikomen? More matzah. No one would volunteer to do something like that. Even if the matzah was good, right at the beginning, but you know what? You're stuffed. You don't want to eat anymore. Why are we eating more? Simply because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to do it. Hear what the father's teaching his son, the most incredible little lesson. The father's telling his son, it's true that if you love Hashem, you'll be able to do all kinds of mitzvahs. But there'll be all kinds of mitzvahs that you won't be able to do because it won't occur to you that you're supposed to do them. Because they're chukim, they're statutes. They're not logical. They're there simply because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to perform His desire. So now we've got a great question and we've got a great answer, even though at the beginning it didn't sound like it. And now we can move on to the Rasha. Rasha ma'uoimer, and now we see the fundamental difference between the question of the Chacham and the question of the Rasha. What does he say? Ma avoda azois lachem. What is all this stuff that you're doing? Avoda. Avodah is something which is a burden, right? All work is a burden, right? Like coming in here, all work. I once saw a bumper sticker on a car in London. It said, "A bad day at the beach is still better than a good day at the office."
Makes sense.
Think about it. Ma avoida zois lachem. What is all this stuff that you're doing? Lachem v'loi loi. He's excluding himself from the whole thing over here. Lachem means you people, not us, right? Ulefi shehoitzi es atzmoi min haklal kofa be'ikam, because he's excluded himself from everybody else. So he's kofa be'ikam. This is like very harsh language. He's a very naughty boy. So you should put his teeth on edge. You have to understand, just picture what's going on. You're at the Seder, right? This is really offensive, what's going to happen now. Everyone's at the Seder, everyone's there, everybody's listening, it's all very beautiful. And then this kid turns around, I mean, he's being very confrontational, right? You know, what is all this stuff you're doing, right? And you say, you know why we're here tonight? Because this is what God did for me when we left Egypt. Li, v'loi loi, me, not him. He's not even referring to him directly. Right? Me, not him. Ilu ha'yasham, if he would have been there, lo yanigol, he would never have been redeemed. That's pretty offensive. I mean, it's true that the question of the Rasha is more offensive. The question is, why is he doing this? Why is the father doing this? So the clue to what's going on is the word that haket shinav means haket shinav means put his teeth on edge. When you've got somebody who's super cynical, somebody who's super disinterested, you know, it's kind of a paradox, but sometimes the only way that you can make a dialogue with somebody like that is by getting them angry. Otherwise, nothing bothers them. They just keep going. They're completely covered in a hard outer shell, and you can't get through. The only way to get through is to be offensive. And if you can get him angry, then maybe he'll start talking.
There's no shell anymore. When the person's angry,
right? You've cracked through, and that's it. And now the person pops out.
Yeah. Now when a person is letting out some anger, you might be able to get him something.
Yes, very good, right? So over here, haket shinav, put it right.
Everything is vessel.
There is the Shibbolei Aleket, which is one of the classic commentaries. He says something which is rather odd. I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody over here, but if you do it, I'd like to know how it went. He says haket shinav means punch out his teeth. How's that for a... Huh?
That's the literal meaning.
That's the literal meaning, but it's not. I mean, in the context over here, it just means put his teeth on edge. But the Shibbolei Aleket says the most incredible thing. He says, Ma ha'avoida azot lachem. What is the avoida that the Rasha is talking about? What is this hard work that the Rasha is talking about? Huh?
Could be anything.
But here, no, in context of Leila Seder, what is it?
I mean, Leila Seder, then the whole idea of sitting down,
right?
And being calm and reading the Agada.
Why is he there? Because he wants to get to the Suda. He wants to get to the meal. Right? He's interested in the Knedlach. He's not interested in the story that comes before it. Says the Shibbolei Aleket, haket shinav. If the only reason he's there is to eat, so punch him in the mouth, and that way he won't be able to eat, and it'll serve him right. Again, I don't recommend that you do this, but if you do, let me know how it went. Okay? It's a kiruv technique.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why is it that it's just sons asking questions? Why isn't any daughters asking questions?
The emphasis is like this. It's just like a generic thing. Banim are children, right? In Hebrew grammar, the minute you've got, you can have 10 women and 1 man, and then you'll use the masculine to address them all, to speak with them all. Over here, when it talks about Abba Bonim Dibra Torah, I don't think it. Again, the Baal HaGoda is trying to get across a lesson of we're going to see him in Hashem. There's enormous significance, I don't think he's suggesting that there are no girls at the Seder, there are no daughters at the Seder. It's just a generic term. That's all.
Actually, this is actually one of the times that girls mostly participate as the same as men. If you look at people's houses and stuff like that, the woman also read the Agada, the woman also drinks the Fokos, everything is done the same.
One thing is for sure, the She'eni Yodei Lishol can only be a boy, not a girl. Because girls never stop asking. Girls, they're always talking, they're always, right? So here, so
but it's talking about everybody, it's also talking about men. Meaning
for sure.
It's both, also
for
girls
sure,
and also men.
For sure. Again, it's like, you understand, it's taking a concept. right, and trying to give over a lesson, which Mitzvah Hashem we'll look at, we'll see. Tam, ma'u mer, right, a simpleton. What does he say? Ma'zot. What is this? Now, you understand it's such a superficial question. You've got a whole Seder sitting over there in front of you. You've got all the people, you've got all the matzahs, and you've got the wine, and you've got the Seder plate, and you've got everything. The table's groaning under the weight of everything that's there. And this kid looks and he says, Mazois. It's like it's a real superficial question. Mazois, va'amate lav, you should say to him, B'choizeg yod, oitzienu Hashem mitzvah mibeit avadim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of slavery. Now, you have to understand something. It's very interesting, right? You would imagine that the father he's got a whole bunch of things that he's got prepared over here to say. And he's pretty excited about Leil Seder. He's going to have all this wonderful opportunity to be able to interact with his children and to be able to bond together with them. And the Baal HaGoda is teaching us the most incredible little lesson over here. You need to answer the question that was asked. He asked a very superficial question, so you have to give him an easy answer. Right? You may have the most wonderful answer, mazois, and you're going to talk about the philosophical underpinnings of the whole of the Exodus and everything that the Seder counts for and what it's supposed to mean to us. And this kid, he's not going to pick up what you're saying. Like, mazois, why are we here? What's going on? So the answer is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Egypt. It's an easy question, and it requires an easy answer. Right? Don't get involved in all kinds of things that your kid's not going to be able to pick up. We're going to come back to all of this in Mitzvah Hashem. If any adeli shol, the one who doesn't know how to ask. Now this kid, he's really sad, right? If the simpleton is sad, this kid is really sad because he's sitting at the Seder and he doesn't even know that he's supposed to ask something. Like, Seder night is like a completely abnormal night. Nothing is the same as it normally is. Right? Everything is different, and the kid doesn't even understand that he's supposed to ask a question. So says the Baal HaGoda, At Pesach, you need to open him up. Right? Of course, all the Mefarshim, all of the commentaries get very excited because At Pesach is the feminine. At, it should say Ata Tiftach, you should open him up. You in the masculine, right? Because it's talking to the father, presumably, right? So what's the idea? The idea over here is something very, very fundamental. A she'eni yodeh lishol, he may be, I don't know how old he is, right? He could be a very small kid or he could be a very old kid. He could be 45 years old, and yet he doesn't know that he's supposed to be asking questions over here. The formative years of a small child, it's normally the mother that's doing the educating. Right? And why is that? First of all, mothers have the most incredible intuition for their children. They before they even start talking. You ever seen this? Mothers and fathers with their little kid, and the kid says ga ga goo 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 ga, right? And the father says, what's he talking about? Like, what's that mean? And the mother says, no, he just wants to know where his pacifier is. That's like, I don't know. Mothers have this incredible intuition to be able to understand what their kids are saying. Mothers also have the most incredible patience. Right? The father sitting down with his 6-month-old kid, all he wants to do is start, playing racing cars with him and, and toy trains and things. And the kid's just lying on the ground and, Googling. And that's, so the Baal HaGoda is saying like this guy, the Seder, he may be 50 years old, but he's like a little baby. And if he's like a little baby, at Pesach, you've got to relate to him like a mother relates to her children. You've got to have patience for him. You've got to try to understand what it is that he's trying to say, even though he doesn't know how to articulate it, right? And then that's how you're going to get through to him. You've got to get him to try to react. You've got to get him to try and come up with something, right? At Pesach. The problem is, though, it doesn't seem, at face value, it doesn't seem that we're told how to do that. So we tell him, we're here because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God took us out of Egypt. Here, so let me ask you a question, and don't behave like the she'eni yodeh lishol, right? Let me ask you a question. The mitzvah of Leil Seder is what's called Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, to tell over the story of the Exodus of Egypt. L'sapir. Right? Why is this book called a Haggadah? It should really be called Sefer Sipor Yetzias Mitzrayim. No, story of a legend. Haggadah, Lehagid. You can tie it into Lehagid. You can tie it into Aggadata. You can tie it into lots of things. But if we've got a book which has been given to us in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the night, right? The mitzvah of the night is Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Says Rabbi Avram ben Agra, the son of the Vilna Gaon. He says like this: the word Vihigadata, right? What does it say? The pasuk says Vihigadata levincha b'yomahu. The word Vihigadata means something new. How do you deal with a she'enu yodeh lishol? Somebody he doesn't even know he's supposed to ask. You have to stimulate him intellectually, right? So you tell over a neat little vort, a neat little idea. No reaction? Don't tell it over again. Don't repeat it over and over. Move on to something else. Did that work? It didn't work. Go on to something else. Keep a flow of new, fresh ideas coming out in the hope that at some point something is going to cause him to react. You hear? V'higada televincha, and that's why this book is called a Haggadah, right? Well, what we're being taught, there's like a subliminal message over here that within the Haggadah, don't stick just to the text. Tell over the story. Of course, you got to tell over what's written over here. But inside of what's written over here, pitch the story to the people who are there. Pitch it to their level. Add in all kinds of things. I heard from two of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim, two of the biggest Talmud scholars here in Jerusalem. They both of them, independently of each other, each one, that on Leil Seder, you know what they do before Pesach? They go and they look up various midrashim, and on Leil Seder they tell over the text of the Haggadah, and they add in all kinds of interesting ideas from the Medrash and from the Aggadata in order to stimulate the people that are there. Because the mitzvah of Leil Seder is not to have a philosophical, theological discussion about Judaism and about Yetzias Mitzrayim and about everything that you can do over Pesach. The mitzvah of Leil Seder is to tell over the story of the Exodus. That's what we're supposed to do, which means that, sometimes you go to a Seder, maybe at the Seder, there'll be some kind of, they'll be discussing some kind of halachic point, getting very involved over there, but that's not the function of Leil Seder. The function of Leil Seder is to tell over the story. Sipor Yetzias Mitzrayim. Needs to be something which is going to stimulate them. It needs to be something which is going to be exciting for them. So far, so good. We understand we've got 4 sons, and we understand that these 4 sons are now asking, each one's asking in their own way. It's interesting that I think the Rashba says, one of the early authorities says, that the word Adam, Aleph Daled Mem, which means a person, is the same numerical value as the word Ma, which means what? 45. And you know a person through the questions that they ask. These questions are very revealing over here. Okay? We understand the Chacham, he really is a Chacham, and the Rasha really is a Rasha, and the Tam really is a Tam, and the She'eni Yodeh Lishol. Well, Malbim was somebody who lived almost 200 years ago. The Malbim lived in an era of the most extraordinary upheaval within the Jewish world. He fought tooth and nail against what was called the Haskalah, the Enlightenment movement. The Malbim asked the most incredible question over here. He says like this, he says, Leil Seder night is a night of opposites. Right? So you've got freedom and slavery, you've got questions and answers, right? He says, when you read through the order of these 4 sons, they're in a very strange order. What is the opposite of a Chacham?
Russia.
No. She'eni Yodeh Lishol. Doesn't say Tzaddik Ma'u Omer. It's Chacham Ma'u Omer. The opposite of a Chacham, the opposite of a wise person is somebody that he doesn't even know how to ask, right? And the opposite of a Tam, which is a simpleton, a naive person, is who? Is a Rasha. Rasha's always plotting, always planning. Says the Malbim, the real order over here should be Chacham Ma'u Omer, V'she'eni Yodeh Lishol at Psachloi, Tam Ma'u Omer, Rasha Ma'u Omer. So the Rasha should be at the end because he's really the least deserving. Why did the Baal HaGodah feel fit to change the order around and put in Chacham, Rasha, Tam, V'she'eni Yodeh Lishol? And the Malbim has the most extraordinary explanation. It's something absolutely fascinating, absolutely fantastic. He says the whole of Jewish history is caught up inside of these 4 sons and in the order of the 4 sons. He says Jewish history is cyclical. It just keeps repeating itself over and over again. We get thrown out of a country, we're going to another country. In the other country, we stay for as many generations as we stay there, and then they get tired of us and we get thrown out, we have to go find another country. They don't want us in the other country either, but they'll take us in. Up until the Holocaust, if you didn't want to get thrown out of the country that you were in, there was a very simple way of being able to stay there, which was what? Convert, assimilation. Right? Think back to the Spanish Inquisition, right? If you didn't want to lose everything that you had, your business and your home and everything, so you could convert, you could become a Christian, and that way you could stay where you were. Some people did it as a sham, some people did it and believed in it, but that was the way. If you wanted to stay in the country, that's what you could do, right? What was going on in Jewish history was like this. They went into a country, they established themselves. Sometimes they became very established, and some of these people were very wealthy and they were extremely well connected. So what would happen was like this: that if you wanted to stay and to hold on to what you had to become like them. Otherwise, what would happen? You get thrown out. Says the Malbim, that's a generation of the Chachamim. The Chachamim are wise enough to understand that their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that's an internal relationship. What they have right now, however difficult it is to give it all up and to leave it, but that's something which is temporary. What's called Chai Shor, this world over here. That it's worth giving up this world in order to be able to retain the relationship with God. Those are the people who understood that it was right to pick themselves up and to leave the country that they were in, leave everything behind. They went with nothing. And to go into a different country to try to reestablish themselves. And off they went. And they went to reestablish themselves over there in the country that they were in, and it was very, very difficult, and they were scrabbling around to make a living, and they're trying to put a roof over their family's head and trying to put a little bit of food on the table, and it was very, very hard, because when they left, they couldn't take things with them, couldn't take their businesses with them. And the next generation, for them, this was the most difficult generation of all, because what do they see? They see that their parents were very well established where they were, and now, simply because they're Jewish, they left everything behind, and now they've got to start all over again in a country where they don't speak the language, they don't understand the culture, and they've got to start all over again. And for most of the people, they never really establish themselves properly again. So the next generation say to themselves, hold on a second, you know what? There's an easy way out of this, right? Which is what? Let's just stop being Jewish. If we stop being Jewish, then we don't have to be concerned about getting thrown out of this country that we just moved into now. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, one of the greatest rabbis in America, the previous generation, the halachic authority of the Jewish world from a generation ago, he said the most astonishing thing. There's a phrase in Yiddish which says, "They're schwer zu sein a Yid." It's difficult to be Jewish. It's hard to be Jewish. And in America, in the 20s and the 30s, people were losing their job every single week because if they didn't want to work on Shabbos, they would lose their jobs, and on Monday they had to go look for work again. And they would come home, and the children would hear their parents saying, "Zeh schwer zu sein a Yid," that it's hard work being Jewish. And the children, what did they learn from that? They didn't understand that when the father who got fired from his work again was saying "Zeh schwer zu sein a Yid," he's saying it's like a proclamation. There's a sense of pride in what he's saying. The kids didn't understand that. All they understood was that if it's difficult to be Jewish, then maybe let's not be Jewish and it's going to be easier. And says the Malbim, that's the second generation. That's the generation of the Rishonim. Not Rishonim because they're evil, wicked people. Rishonim because they turned their backs on God. And then comes the next generation. Rav Moshe Feinstein said, Rav Moshe Feinstein said that there was a whole generation was lost from that phrase of the schwer zu sein a Yid. A whole generation was gone. So Rav Moshe Feinstein didn't say this, but I think really what he's saying is that when these people came home on Friday after having lost their jobs again, what they really needed to do, however hard it was to dance around the table and to show their children that they're, this is what we do. This is what we feel when we're able to sacrifice ourselves for God's commandments, for what God wants us to do. the kids picked up the wrong message, and a whole generation. If you know anything about American Jewry, the history of American Jewry, a whole generation was lost through this. And then comes the next generation, the generation of the Tam. What is the Tam? He's a simpleton. In Jewish terms, he's a simpleton. His parents are not Orthodox. He's been brought up in a completely secular environment. He's gone to a non-Jewish school, but he's still got Orthodox grandparents. And sometimes he sees his grandparents. And then maybe he'll say, Mazot, if you get lucky, right? Maybe he'll pull his nose out of his iPhone long enough, right, to say, Mazot, what are these funny things that Grandma and Grandpa are doing? And then says the Malbim, the next generation is what? The generation of She'eni Yodeh Lishol. He doesn't even know how to ask. Why? Because his grandparents are completely irreligious, his parents are completely irreligious, and he's been brought up completely irreligious, and if he's still got great-grandparents that are still alive, so they're probably stashed away in an old age home somewhere. He's got no connection with them. She'eni Yodeh Lishol. He doesn't even know that he's supposed to ask questions. Says the Baal HaGoda, At Pesach lo, you've got to do the work. Who's the you? Us, the Orthodox community. We've got to do it.
There's a corollary to that. The second generation become achievers in a financial sense.
Oh, very good, right?
And they, in their turn, support Judaism by their tzedakah.
Well, working on the premise that they're still attached, that they still have that connection. I'll tell you a fascinating story. Rav Beryl Wine told over a story. You know, Rav Beryl Wine used to be a Rav in Miami then he moved to New York and then he came to here, but way back. He said like this. He said that when he was a Rav in Miami, the Ponevezher Rav, who was the head of the Ponevezher Yeshiva over here, Rav Kahanaman, used to come to Miami once a year to raise funds, and Rav Beryl Wine used to drive him around and take him to all the donors. And he said he took him once to a place where it was a factory, and he took him to the owner of the factory was the grandson of the original owner, and the original owner had been frum, and he'd given a nice sizable donation to the yeshiva every year. And then his son had taken over, and his son wasn't frum anymore, but his son was traditional, so he kept up the tradition of giving. And then they came to the grandson's now taken over, and the grandson's not the least bit religious at all. And the grandson tells the Ponevezher Rav, he says, I don't believe in any of this stuff, I really don't. He says, and I'm not going to give you your money. I'm sorry. And Rav Wine said that the Ponevezher Rav, they got back into the car, and the Ponevezher Rav started to cry. He started crying like a baby. And Rav Wine said he didn't know what to, how he's supposed to react to it. So he said, Rabbi, don't worry, we'll get the money from a different source. So the Ponevezher Rav said the most extraordinary thing. He said, I don't care about the $5,000 that he was going to give. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to give us the money from another place. I don't care about that. He says, but the only connection to Judaism that this person had left was his donation to the yeshiva. And now he's stopped that as well. He severed the connection. Why is there no fifth son?
Because he's not there.
Which means that either at Pesach lo, either you've done the job and he's now back in where he needs to be, or there is no fifth son.
He's not Jewish, maybe.
Where's he going to come from, right? Where's he going to be from? He doesn't have anything attached to anything, no way of being attached at all. So let's just try to work out something which is perhaps the most important dimension of all. And then we'll understand why these sons are here in the Haggadah. What are they doing over here? They really don't have any connection to Yetzias Mitzrayim, the story of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. So who's responsible over here? Let's go back and have a look. The She'eni Yodeh Lishol for sure is not responsible. He doesn't know anything from anything. That's why he says, At Pesach lo, you've got to do the job. We, the Orthodox community, have to reveal something about this boy's heritage in order to allow him to be able to connect back in. The Tam, well, maybe he's got a small amount of responsibility over here, maybe. Maybe he should have asked a little deeper question than Mazot whilst his grandparents were still alive to be able to try to understand who he really is. So I'd ask you who's responsible. Most people would say for sure it's got to be the Rasha. He's the one who made the decision that he's not going to do this anymore, right? But Be'emes, it's not like that. In Jewish history, that's something that repeats itself over and over. And again, nobody, Khalila, don't understand me, no one's judging anything over here. It's just facts. That when the generation of the Chachamim, when they left the countries that they were in, and they had to go and they had to work, they worked unbelievable hours just to be able to pay their rent and buy food. And it was unbelievable what was going on. And they'd lost everything, they'd left it all behind. And they were so involved in trying to stay alive that very often the one thing they forgot to do was to educate their children. And the children now, they don't understand anymore. They don't understand. If everything is, if it's all so terrible being Jewish, then why bother? It's a good question.
Absolutely.
We're not judging anybody over here. First of all, none of us should ever be in the position of having to experience any of this, for sure. The language, they've got no connection to the language. So when you stay inside of the Jewish communities, you just speak Yiddish with each other, and everyone gets on fine. But when you want to get a job somewhere outside, the language, the culture, it's everything. And they were scrambling. They were working hours that it's not normal what they were doing.
Jewish.
But now, perhaps we understand the most important thing of all over here. What are the four sons? What are they doing here? What's their function here in the Leil HaSeder? Because Leil HaSeder is a night of education. Leil HaSeder is a night when we sit down with the children and we explain to the children why it is that we're Jewish, what it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. And Leil HaSeder is coming to teach us that each child is their own child, and each child has to be taught in the way that child will be able to understand in order to be able to pass it over. You know, the Mishnah Berurah says the most astonishing thing. The Mishnah Berurah says in Halachos of Pesach that you should give out nuts at the Leil HaSeder, right, in order to keep the children excited. The Gemara says, why do we do all kinds of things on Leil HaSeder? That the children should ask questions. Since when are we so concerned about the children asking questions? Since when are we so concerned about giving out nuts in order for the children to be stimulated? Here, the pshat is because Leil HaSeder is all about laying down foundations for our identity, our national identity, and our individual identity as well. In my home, we don't give out nuts. I look around the table, there are enough nuts there to begin with. I have a great big bowl. My mother-in-law very kindly, a few years ago, bought us a big silver bowl, and they're full of individually wrapped chocolates. Little chocolates. Anybody asks a question, anybody sings nicely, anybody answers something, anybody says something which is interesting or fun or nice that's to do with Pesach, they get a chocolate. Everybody. I'll tell you something, It works like a dream, I'm telling you. From the smallest to the biggest. My mother-in-law is always by us every Pesach, right? And she's as involved with everybody else. And everyone's got a little bag that they can put their chocolates into. And it becomes like a little competition. Who's going to get them more? And it works like a dream, really. I'm telling you, it's the most incredible thing. So now we know what the sons are here. Why are the sons here? To teach us. To teach us Leil HaSeder. You know that according to the Jewish year, Nisan is the first month of the year. So Pesach is the first Yom Tov of the year. And that's why Leil HaSeder is all about we're putting down these foundations. We're going to try and give this over to the kids, each one according to who they are, each one according to his understanding. So here, we'll end with an idea. Rav Shlomo Ganzfried, who you may be familiar with his name, he wrote what's called the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the concise code of Jewish law. But he also wrote a book called the Apirion, which is his commentary on Chumash. And he writes over there that the Pasuk says that the function of Leil HaSeder is Leman Tesaper Ba'oznei Bincha Ubein Bincha. In order to tell over the story, Leman Tesaper Ba'oznei Bincha Ubein Bincha, to your child and to your grandchild. So says Rosh Shlomo Ganzfried a very interesting question. He says, wait a minute, what did the grandson do that he's got to listen to this? He's got to listen to it twice. He's got to hear it from his grandfather and hear it from his father as well. What did he do? So he says like this. He says that the Torah is coming to teach us, Leman tesaper ba'oznei bincha, that if you tell this over to your child in the way that your child can understand it properly, and he then tells it over to his child, you've now given him the tools that he can give it over to his child properly. it's as if you've told your grandchild directly. It's a very, very beautiful idea, and it really encapsulates the concept of Leil HaSeder. It really does. Leil HaSeder is all about transferring from one generation to the next, the ability to be able to transfer it on to the generation that comes after that as well. So I have a proof for Shlomo Gansfried. He doesn't need my proofs, he really doesn't. But to me, he doesn't mention this, but to me it's something which is absolutely clear. The verse really reads that you should tell it over into the ears of your children and your grandchildren. And the word ears seems to be somewhat superfluous, because where else do you tell things over, right? I mean, what are you going to talk up his nose? No, right? Ears are for hearing. Why on earth does the Torah say, Leman tesaper be'ozne bincha or bein bincha? And I think the answer is because the pasuk, the verse, is coming to teach us that every son has his own ear. Every son understands things in his own way and has his own approach and his own ability to be able to understand things. So here, because I think over here when you say ba'ozne, it's turning it into it's teaching you that
go inside and internalize.
Go inside. It should be internalized, but to recognize that every kid has his own ear. The Shema is going to be too generic. Everyone's going to hear it, right? The word over here with the ears, right? So Shlomo HaMelech says that Chanoich Nana al Pidakoi, every child has to be educated according to his derech, according to his personality, according to his ability. And that's what Leil HaSeder is all about. The idea of relating to every single child according to who he is, and allowing each child to on Leil HaSeder to flourish, right? And to be able to have a connection to Leil HaSeder. So I'll tell you something a little bit personal. I haven't thought about this for a while actually, but somebody mentioned it to me the other day, and it got me thinking. When I was growing up, our Seder was always run by my grandfather. It was always in our home. And my mother made enormous story. There were 40, 50, sometimes even 60 people that were there for the first night and the second night. It was like a gathering point for all kinds of strays and waifs and who knows what, and lots and lots of family as well. And my grandfather ran the Seder. It was his night, and he sat over there, and I can picture him very clearly at the head of the table. He passed away. Almost he died. He passed away 30 years ago, and I remember the first time that we had a Seder without my grandfather. So my father took over, and for me it was very strange. It really was. I never realized all those years that was just like the norm. My grandfather was there and he ran the Seder, and that was just the norm. That was the way that it was done. But the first year that my father took over, it was very strange. It really was. And there was something palpable that was missing from the Seder. And it took me a long time to understand. But what was missing was that extra generation. The idea of Leil HaSeder, of giving over from one generation to the next generation. And that was gone. And that's Leil HaSeder and the four sons and the father that's still there to be able to try to educate his children and to turn Judaism into something which is not Zeh Shver zu sein a Yid. That it should be something joyous. It should be something that we can relate to and something that we can get the most incredible enjoyment from. So Mitzvah Hashem, everybody should have a inspiring and an uplifting Pesach. It should be a Seder that, in the Kabbalistic Sfarim, it says that on Seder night, all of the gates in the Shamayim, in the heavens, are wide open. We have the most extraordinary ability to be able to tap into the most incredible spiritual dimensions. So Mitzvah Hashem, we should all be Zocher, we should all merit to be able to tap into those dimensions, and we should come out of Seder different from the way that we went in, and it should be a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, maybe with the emphasis on the Sameach, that we should all be able to feel the Simcha, the true Simcha. B'Yerushalayim haBenuya. Amen.